welcome back to the Plunder Den. In this week's episode, we're going to be building a nesting village. So I kind of alluded to this project in my last episode where I was talking about bringing a portable terrain to AdeptiCon. Now, of course, I live in Canada and AdeptiCon's just outside Chicago, so I'm definitely going to have to fly there. And there's only so much I can bring. A lot of people have asked me to bring terrain to AdeptiCon, and I really want to. I really want to showcase some of my terrain there. Would love to have some of my terrain in the tournaments there, and just maybe playing in the hallways and some pickup games and showcasing some of my terrain. So I was thinking, how could I get a bunch of structures? My idea in my head was I wanted to bring some kind of village. So I knew I couldn't bring it all individual houses, but I thought, well, what if I could build them all together? So I kind of came up with the idea, this is similar to a Ukrainian nesting doll, where you just put all the dolls into each other and you get down to the small doll at the end. Similar to that. But I decided to do it with houses. Now, the only thing I wanted to do is make sure that they all were the same scale. So I kind of made the windows and openings and the doors all the same size and just assumed that they would all be different size houses. So let's take a look at it. Maybe that's the best way to explain it is I'll just pull it out here and you guys can see what I'm talking about. So this is it right here. Now, I've finished painting the bottom floor. So this is part one. There'll be a part two where we cover the construction of the roofs. And as you can see, I made enough space here to put roofs on all of these. Now the outer shell, I'm going to put a larger roof on it with windows on it, so it's more distinct than the rest of the pieces that are in here. So let's take a look at the inner pieces. So this is the outer house. It's a pretty large house. But let's look at the inner parts. So then I built this stone, kind of like a shed or something like that. But it's completely playable. You can get all the way in it. And I employed a lot of techniques. I got egg carton shells, little paper clippings in there. We got all sorts of stuff that I've used on the channel to build these. But I had to measure them. That's the hardest part, was measuring it to exact size so I could account for even the floorboards and everything, because each part adds a little bit of height to it, right? And you want it all to fit under the roof. So anyways, that's one piece. And then we got kind of a smaller house. Maybe it's a cottage of sort. And these ones just have all plain roofs on here. Of course, I can only put the windows on the top one, but that's okay. It'll be a different variety. And I wanted 4. I think 4 is a good number for a village. The 4 sides of the village, per se, 2 on each side of the road. And then we got a little bit of a larger house here. Now you can see I kind of did some different colors on some of the flooring. This one's got stonework inside of it. And of course I got some more that yellow ochre that I like to use. All right, so those were the 4 pieces that I built. And I made it very generic. So this terrain, it's in the Tudor style, but it could be used in, Blood and Plunder, Blood and Valor, Blood and Steel. It could be used for bolt action, Dungeons and Dragons, Warhammer, you name it. This stuff could be used for. And that's what I really wanted to do. So when I'm at that tournament, I could really use this terrain with all sorts of players and other people that I meet there to, use this in a match with them or play a sample of the game that they got. So I really wanted to have something that I could just carry around with me and just pull it out and use it. All right, so that's what we're going to be building in today's episode. I hope you guys like what we're doing here in the Plunder Den, and make sure you smash that like button and consider subscribing to the Plunder Den and get first-hand information when I start these kind of projects. All right, everyone, let's get down to the table, let's start painting, and let's start crafting. Okay, so I started this project out by measuring my luggage. So this is my carry-on that I'm going to be carrying to AdeptiCon. So I got about 10 inches to play with here, maybe 9 inches. And I figure I'm going to make this building about 6 inches high. It gives me lots of room to play with there. A standard building I usually make is 3 inches tall for the main floor, and then probably 2 inches higher up after that. This large building, I did make it 6 inches tall. You can see I got my little mini there just to measure out how a miniature would look in the size of these houses. So it's a reasonable size. That smallest one is like the stone shed. And I'm pretty happy with the sizing of it. Now to measure out the other squares to make sure they all fit into each other, I took out the large one here and I measured 1/2 inch all the way around. You can see I'm measuring right there, 1/2 inch all the way around, and that's how I made my second square, and then moved on to my other ones. So they're all 1/2 inch smaller from each other all the way around. That way they easily slide into each other. And why I did a 1/2 inch around everything is I figured that would be enough space to put any bricks or decorations on essentially on the outside of each house or building. So I wanted to accommodate by giving myself a 1/2 inch space. So now I'm working on the bottoms, and I kind of just traced these two ends. I kind of did the two ends of the peaks of the roof would be first, and then kind of just traced it on the bottom here. That way I accommodate for the thickness of this foam board here. Sometimes I forget to make sure I remember to accommodate for that as well, because that's part of the overall thickness of it, right? Is the thickness of the walls. So I just trace it on there, so I remember what it is, and then I can easily measure between the two traced lines and kind of measure that out. Now, I kind of mentioned in the intro that I cut the windows and doorways, and well, maybe not the windows in this piece, but the doorways all the same size, so all the buildings look like they're the same scale, even though that they're different heights. You can clearly see, but if you add the same, like, similar size windows and doors, they all look like they're part of the same world. It just looks like smaller buildings and larger buildings. And of course, I said I'm going to decorate the top roof of the larger one. So now let's move on to framing out these walls. So really, this is kind of how I do all my walls now. I use this balsa wood. I got flat balsa wood, square balsa wood, matchsticks. And I even have a coffee stir stick. You can see it on the far end. I didn't point to it, but that's what I essentially use to frame out this entire doorway. Now, I didn't use too many with the big square balsa woods as a kind of an overhang there, just because it's a little thicker. And then, of course, I texturized the walls with this tinfoil ball just to give it a stucco feel. And I did all the pieces that way. Now, of course, I didn't put doors and windows on everything. I just kind of decided I'm not going to show you each one, but that's how I build all of them. I just show you the big pile of wood that I'm going to stick in there. So this is a little easier to look at. This is it all laid out so you can see what choices I made essentially for windows and doors on each building. You can see I just put a couple windows in each one, doorway, just to kind of put some basic stuff on each one. I didn't want to go too crazy. Just, wanted to have a few options. I decided not to put any glass or anything in the windows. I just want these to be playable so you can stick your guns out of them or wherever, whoever's in those little houses to, play through. So I just kind of left it with nothing in it. So now I'm just showing you to use the hot glue. I just prefer to just glue it all together with a hot glue gun real fast and rapidly put these together. Now, I do want to make a note that on the bottom base piece, I left the paper on the bottom and top of that dollar store foam board. That gives it a little more strength, and I'm planning on gluing popsicle sticks for floorboards anyways on top of that, so don't worry about too much seeing the paper, but it does add more strength to the base of it, so that's why I left it on there. So this is my first time actually putting everything together and seeing how it all fits into each other. Now, there is kind of a certain way that you have to fit it in. The doors have to face a certain way so they're not rubbing against other doors, but they all lock into each other real nice. And I was real happy with my efforts to measure that out properly. So then I was just rubbing with my finger there where I'm going to put all the foam bricks here. So this is insulation foam that I got from the Home Depot. I just got my box cutter here, and I'm just going to, my OFA knife, and we're just going to cut these all up. So I just cut them really thin, thinner than I normally would, mainly because I'm trying to save space on the walls. So I'm really considering that. So these are a lot thinner than I normally would make the bricks. just so I don't take so much space up on the outside. I only gave myself a 1/2 inch all the way around, right? And I don't want to take up too much space. So then I grabbed them all after I've cut them all. You can see this took forever. And then I stuck them all in the coffee tin. So now that big pile there, I actually cut them into smaller pieces as well. And then stuck them into the coffee tin, shook them up for about 3 minutes, and they were good to go. So then these are all the popsicle sticks. I got my hobby knife here and just skewered them all. Just give them a little texturizing look to them, so it looks like actual floorboard and not a popsicle stick. Now those are all techniques you've seen me do before. These are all similar things that I've done before. And then I decided to put the posts in here. So this adds more strength to it. Kind of keeps everything, when you're sliding everything in, they're not rattling around in there essentially. They'll hit those posts on the corner. So it kind of makes everything fit snug in there. But you got to be careful not to put it too much space in there is taken, because you won't be able to slide these pieces in here. You only have a little bit of room. You got a 1/2 inch, remember. So you got to be careful what you put in there. So then I decided to work on the floor, and I'm using as coffee stir sticks to frame out kind of like a molding all the way around the bottom before I slap in my popsicle sticks. Now, I did use hot glue. Normally, I would use white glue for this, but I want them to lie really flat because of a limited space, because of them being in each other. I decided to hot glue it down so that stays down nice and flat and the popsicle stick doesn't bulge a little bit. So normally I would just use white glue, and it kind of like that twisted board look, and I don't mind that it raises a little bit. But for this case, because they're nesting houses, I want it to be completely flat. So then I hot glued them down. So I just did kind of a random pattern in all of them, except for the stone storage area. I decided to go to egg cartons. So this is just paper egg cartons, and you see me do this on this channel before. I just cut them out into little brick shapes because I wanted to do like a stone floor in here. And that's really, I just added white tacky glue on this one. I'm certainly not going to hot glue that in there. Burnt my finger 100 times. So I just white glued that in there. So now I'm moving back to the bricks. Now that I've addressed all the flooring in each one of these houses, I've decided I'm going to only go up just a little past the window there, and I'm going to put bricks in there. So I decided to do larger bricks on the bottom, one row all the way around the bottom, and then do kind of like a shelf brick above it. So you can see this is how I did it. And they're really flat, they're really thin. You can see they're not sticking out very far. Having those windows in there is a good indicator. I didn't want to go too far out past those because I knew that would be too far out and it would start catching on everything inside. So I kept those as a good gauge and measure of how much space I actually had around so they don't get caught when I slide them into each other. So I'm just showing you all the different ones, the different bricks that I've completed on there. They all look pretty much the same, and the insides. And then this one's a slight different because I want it to be like a stone like shed or something. So I covered the entire thing in stones. So I kind of just went right off the top. Once that dries, I'm just going to use my open knife and I'm going to slice those off real easy to trim that up. So now I'm going to move to putting in, these are flat coffee stir sticks. So you can get coffee stir sticks that are really, a little bit thicker. I got these at the dollar store. They're really, really thin. They're almost like, they're super thin actually. So there's two different types of coffee stir sticks you can find. You can find ones that are really thick and these really thin ones. So for this project, I definitely wanted to go with extremely thin ones, just so the corners are not sticking out too far. And again, saving on space so everything slides into each other. So I was really conscious of all the different items I put on here to make sure I'm saving as much space as I possibly can all the way around. So all these pieces fit in. But I still wanted to decorate the outside like I always do to give it that Tudor style, but use materials that wouldn't take up much space. So I'm just going to kind of show you that. So that one was a little bit trickier, but it fits. And like I said, they all fit together. That one's a little tight, but nothing too crazy. Everything fit together really well. And I'm glad I went to all those skinny materials that really, really helped. So I'm just showing you after I've completed everything, and everything is pretty well fabricated here. All the outer walls have been completed with that decorated sticks, just giving that Tudor style look. And we're all completed that. And everything fits together. So as I was going through this and adding more and more things to the outside, I always kept testing, making sure that everything fits together properly. So you can see that one's a little tight, but it fits. And everything's good here. So I always just double check to make sure it's all in good shape. So I was always contemplating also the paint, how much that might add to it. But really, at the end of the day, it didn't add much, and it didn't affect anything in the sliding of these pieces together. So I started with my folk art craft paint, painted everything as I always do. This kind of seals everything in, and it gives a lot of strength to the pieces. And of course, it's a good undercoat primer. I like to use this black and then kind of build my layers up on top of it. So we've seen, if you want a real in-depth painting tutorial on the buildings, I have one separate for weathered buildings. I have a painting tutorial video just on that, so I recommend you watch that. I'm just going to give you a brief overview of all the colors. So that was real brown that I added. And then we're going to move to the bark brown. That's what I have up in the corner there. And like I said, we're just going to briefly go through the colors that I used. I didn't want to spend a lot of time on the painting of this, just more of the construction of it. If you want, again, I have a painting tutorial for buildings. So I'm just showing you using the bark brown, and this is after I've completed all that. And I'm just showing you in stages as I'm adding the colors, what the buildings look like after I'm done, to get kind of an idea what it should look like. I mean, of course, you don't have to use any of these colors. You could use whatever you want, to be honest. It's Pueblo. It's my orange color. Again, these are all colors that I use on all my buildings for undertones. I just like the way this looks underneath. It just adds a lot of depth to your piece here. All these earth tones that I add on. So from here, we're going to move to camel. And we're definitely going to hit all the stonework on here. And I like to use a brush, a big flat brush on the walls on the inside. Just kind of make it look like it's kind of an old stone stucco wall kind of thing. And that's how I paint them. So this is after I added the camel. You can see I made a huge difference on those walls. And I really don't add a lot. I just add a little bit more wash to those walls, and those walls are pretty well done. I kind of like that old rustic look to it. A lot of my buildings have that same color inside. I like the way it looks. So now I'm going to complete the stonework with desert yellow, skeleton bone, necrotic flesh, and mummy robe. Again, these are the colors you've seen me use on my stone tutorial videos. These are, even though the stone's pretty good right now, you could just leave it the way it is right now. But I like to take it even a few steps further and add those colors in. And I'm going to do an yellow ochre and real brown mixture to first on the floors. And then I'm going to add just yellow ochre. So kind of 2 layers on there to get your kind of, really orangey glowing floor or yellow glowing floor. All right, so this is after I've added all that colors for the stonework. We're getting pretty close to being done here. Just kind of giving you a brief overlook of all that. I decided to keep the floor orange in there. So I have a variety of different floor colors. The outside of this building, I'm going to use this dynamic yellow and this moon dust. So I always take a darker yellow and a lighter yellow as a highlight. So same thing with the green here. We got the army green, and then we got the scale hide. I'm going to use also as the highlight on here. And then in here, we got the electric blue as a darker blue, and then I'm going to use this void shield blue as the highlight. So I put the dark color on first. This is what I've done here, and then I've added the highlights on top of that. So you can see that it's highlighted in the center. And I like these bright colors. I just like my houses to stand out on the tabletop, to be honest. You could use dull colors. You could just use white and grays and beiges. So now I got ash gray, dark stone, hardened leather, and we got some mummy robe here. So this is going to be all the woodwork. I'm going to do some of the framing in that mummy robe and those grays and that hardened leather on some of the trim on here. So this is after I've done this. And this also hides some of the spills and the blips and stuff from the green and the yellow and the blue that I've added. So now I'm going to do the final decorations on here. So this is a contrast skeleton horde, Agrax Earth Shader, and Commando Green. I really just add the grunge that I need to complete this project. All right, so this is it. It's all done. Well, the bottoms are. In the second video, we are going to tackle the roofs for these buildings. And just a reminder that there is no video next week. I always move to my new rotation, 3 on, 1 off. But when we get back, I will have the second part of this project, and we'll have it all completed. All right, so that's a wrap on this video. I hope you guys all enjoyed this. Thank you so much for tuning in. And I will see you in the next one.